Your mind is screaming right now. Even as you watch this, thousands of thoughts are fighting for attention, alerts are buzzing in your pocket, and the world keeps demanding more of you. I bet you can't remember the last time you felt truly quiet inside. The constant noise isn't just annoying, it's stealing your life. The average person spends 47% of their waking hours lost in thought, missing the only moment that actually exists, right now. But what if I told you that mental peace isn't something you need to chase? What if the ability to quiet your mind permanently is already within you, just waiting to be unlocked? I've spent years studying the intersection of ancient wisdom and modern neuroscience, and I discovered something that changed everything for me. Mental quiet isn't about adding more techniques to your life. It's about removing the obstacles you didn't even know were there. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share exactly how to create lasting stillness within yourself, even when the world around you feels like chaos. Not a temporary calm that disappears when life gets hard, but a fundamental shift in how your mind works. These aren't the same mindfulness tips you've heard before. This is the roadmap to rewiring your relationship with thought itself. The silence you're searching for is closer than you think. Let me show you how to find it. The thought waterfall technique. Have you ever noticed how the harder you try not to think about something, the more it dominates your mind? It's like telling yourself, don't think about pink elephants. Suddenly, that's all you can see. This paradox is the first major roadblock to finding mental quiet. The typical advice you've heard about clearing your mind or stopping your thoughts is actually making your mental noise worse. When I first started meditating, I'd sit there frustrated, trying desperately to push thoughts away. Each time a thought appeared, I felt like I'd failed. Maybe you felt this too. The exhausting battle against your own mind, where you're simultaneously the attacker and the defender. It's no wonder so many people give up on mindfulness practices. They're stuck in this impossible war with themselves. But what if I told you that mental quiet doesn't require you to stop thinking? What if the secret isn't about fighting your thoughts at all, but completely changing your relationship to them? Neuroscience research has revealed something fascinating. The part of your brain that generates thoughts is entirely separate from the part that observes them. This discovery unlocks a revolutionary approach to finding peace in a loud world. The breakthrough comes when you realize that thoughts themselves aren't the problem. It's your relationship with them that creates suffering. Most people are swimming in the stream of their thoughts, being carried away by every current and eddy. But there's another option you may never have considered. This brings us to tip number 1 out of 10, the thought waterfall technique. Instead of battling your thoughts directly, I want you to visualize your mind as a powerful waterfall. The water represents your thoughts, constant, flowing, sometimes overwhelming. But here's the key shift. You are not the water. You are not your thoughts. You are the space behind the waterfall, the cave or ledge that observes the water rushing past. Practice standing behind your thought waterfall. When you notice mental noise, don't try to stop the waterfall. That's impossible. Instead, take a step back in your mind. Recognize that you can observe these thoughts without being swept away by them. Say to yourself, I notice these thoughts happening, rather than I need to stop thinking. This simple perspective shift creates immediate distance from mental noise. It's not about controlling thoughts, but changing your position relative to them. The waterfall keeps flowing, but you stay dry, watching from behind. Try this right now. Close your eyes for a moment and notice what thoughts are moving through your mind. Now imagine stepping back, as if finding a dry space behind a waterfall. You're still aware of the thoughts, but there's now a gap between you and them. In this gap lies peace. Not because the thoughts have stopped, but because you've stopped being thrown around by them. With practice, you'll find that the waterfall itself becomes less overwhelming. When thoughts aren't constantly pulling you into their current, they naturally begin to slow. The mental noise doesn't disappear completely, nor should it. Thoughts are a valuable part of being human, but they no longer dominate your experience. This technique works in any situation, during a stressful meeting, in a difficult conversation, or when you're lying awake at night with racing thoughts. Whenever mental noise grows loud, remember, you are not the waterfall. You are the awareness behind it. Step back and find the quiet that's been there all along. Sensory anchoring revolution. Think back to the last time you were completely absorbed in something beautiful. Perhaps a sunset, a piece of music, or the face of someone you love. In that moment, was your mind racing with thoughts about your to-do list or past regrets? Probably not. Instead, you are likely experiencing a rare moment of true presence, when your attention was fully anchored in your senses rather than your thoughts. These moments of sensory absorption aren't just pleasant. They're glimpses of the mental quiet we're seeking, but they seem to happen randomly, don't they? They catch us by surprise, and before we know it, we're back in the whirlwind of mental noise. What if you could deliberately create these moments of sensory presence throughout your day? What if you could train your brain to shift from thinking to sensing on command? Traditional mindfulness approaches often ask you to set aside special time for meditation. 10 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes before bed. But in our hectic world, these formal practices are often the first things we abandon when life gets busy. And even when we do meditate regularly, many people find that the calm they experience on the cushion doesn't last when they return to their noisy lives. I discovered that lasting mental quiet requires a different approach, one that's integrated into your daily experience rather than separate from it. This approach allows you to find stillness not just during dedicated meditation sessions, but in the midst of your busy life, while working, connecting with others, or navigating challenges. This brings us to tip number 2 out of 10, the sensory anchoring revolution. Rather than relying solely on traditional meditation, develop what I call sensory anchors throughout your day. Specific physical sensations that instantly pull you back to the present moment. Here's how it works. Choose 3 everyday sensations that you can use as anchors. These might include the feeling of water on your hands, the sensation of your feet making contact with the ground as you walk, or the weight of your body pressing into a chair. These ordinary physical experiences become your doorways back to the present moment. Next, deliberately train your attention to fully engage with these sensory anchors whenever you encounter them. When you wash your hands, really feel the temperature of the water, the slickness of the soap, the pressure against your skin. When you walk, notice the precise sensation of your heel touching down, followed by the ball of your foot. When you sit, feel the points of contact between your body and the chair supporting you. The magic happens when you practice this consistently. Your brain begins to form neural pathways that automatically redirect your attention from thinking to sensing when you encounter these anchors. It's like creating instant mindfulness triggers throughout your day. No formal meditation required. What makes this approach revolutionary is that it bypasses thought loops entirely. Rather than using thinking to fight thinking, which never works, you're shifting into a completely different mode of awareness. Your sensory experience always exists in the present moment, and when you fully engage with it, mental noise naturally subsides. Start with just one sensory anchor this week. Perhaps the feeling of water whenever you wash your hands or shower. Each time you notice this sensation, let it pull you completely into your sensory experience. Notice how in that moment of sensory absorption, mental chatter naturally quiets. You're not fighting thoughts. You're simply shifting attention to something else. As this becomes habitual, add more sensory anchors throughout your day. The taste of your morning coffee, the rhythm of your breathing, the texture of fabrics against your skin. Each one becomes a portal to presence, an opportunity to step out of thought and into direct experience. The beauty of sensory anchoring is that it turns ordinary moments into opportunities for mental quiet. You don't need special equipment, apps, or even extra time. Life itself becomes your mindfulness practice. And because these anchors are integrated into your normal activities, the calm they generate begins to permeate your entire day, not just isolated meditation sessions. With consistent practice, you'll find yourself spontaneously returning to sensory awareness throughout your day. Mental quiet becomes your new normal, not just a rare and fleeting experience. The untold truth about mental noise. Have you ever noticed that your mind seems to replay the same thoughts over and over again? Perhaps it's worrying about a future event, replaying a conversation that didn't go well, or dwelling on a decision you need to make. Despite your best efforts to quiet these thoughts, they keep returning, like a song stuck on repeat. There's a hidden reason for this persistence that most mindfulness teachers never talk about, and understanding it will transform your relationship with mental noise forever. Most approaches to quieting the mind treat all thoughts as equal, just mental activity to be observed or let go. But the reality is far more nuanced and fascinating. Your recurring thoughts aren't random at all. They're carrying important messages that, once understood, can lead to profound mental quiet. I discovered this truth during a particularly difficult period in my life when my mind was especially noisy. Despite years of meditation practice, I couldn't seem to find peace. My breakthrough came not from trying harder to quiet my mind, but from asking a different question. What if my mental noise was trying to tell me something? What if these persistent thoughts weren't the problem, but rather signals pointing to something deeper that needed my attention? This question led me to one of the most transformative insights in my journey toward lasting mental quiet. And it's about to change everything for you, too. This brings us to tip number 3 out of 10, the untold truth about mental noise. Mental chatter is often just your mind's way of processing unresolved emotions. Rather than fighting with the thoughts themselves, you need to identify and address the emotional signature behind them. Here's what neuroscience has revealed. Thoughts that persist do so because they're connected to emotional charges in your nervous system. Your brain is essentially trying to process these emotions through thought, but thinking alone can never resolve emotional experiences. It's like trying to digest food by chewing it over and over again without ever swallowing. The key to quieting these persistent thoughts isn't more mindfulness or better concentration. It's emotional resolution. When you address the underlying emotional charge, the thoughts naturally dissolve, like smoke after a fire has been extinguished. Start by listening differently to your mental noise. The next time you notice recurring thoughts, pause and ask yourself, what emotion might be driving this thought pattern? Is there fear beneath your worries about the future? Sadness or rejection beneath rumination about the past? Frustration or anger beneath critical thoughts? Once you've identified the emotional signature, bring your attention directly to the physical sensation of that emotion in your body. Where do you feel it? Does it have a temperature, weight, or texture? Stay with this bodily sensation rather than jumping back into the thought story about it. This direct attending to emotion instead of thought is revolutionary. Your body processes emotions naturally when you give them your full, non-judgmental attention. It's like opening a pressure valve that's been stuck, allowing emotional energy to flow and release rather than recycling as mental noise. I discovered that just 3 minutes of attending to the bodily sensations of an emotion can do more to quiet related thought patterns than hours of meditation focused on the thoughts themselves. It's that powerful. Let me give you a concrete example. If you find yourself constantly thinking about an upcoming presentation at work, traditional approaches might tell you to observe these thoughts without attachment or to redirect your attention elsewhere. But using our approach, you'd recognize that anxiety is likely driving these thoughts. You'd then locate the physical sensation of anxiety in your body, perhaps tightness in your chest or a fluttering in your stomach. By attending directly to these sensations with curious awareness, you process the emotion itself, rather than circling endlessly in thoughts about it. The remarkable thing about emotional processing is that it eliminates mental noise at its source. When emotions are fully felt and moved through, the thoughts connected to them naturally subside. You're not suppressing or controlling thoughts. You're addressing their root cause, which is far more effective and lasting. This approach requires courage at first. Many of us have been taught to avoid difficult emotions, but paradoxically, willingness to feel your emotions fully is the fastest path to mental quiet. Emotions themselves typically last only 90 seconds when fully experienced. It's the thought loops around them that can persist for hours, days, or even years. Start practicing emotional awareness today. When mental noise arises, shift your attention from the content of your thoughts to the emotional energy animating them. Feel this energy directly in your body. As you develop this skill, you'll be amazed at how quickly persistent thought patterns dissolve, leaving behind genuine mental quiet. Micro-silence integration. Have you ever wondered why moments of mental quiet feel so fleeting? You might experience peace during meditation or yoga, but within minutes of returning to your normal activities, the mental noise comes rushing back. This frustrating pattern leads many people to believe that lasting quiet is impossible in our busy world. But what if the problem isn't your noisy life? It's the way you've been thinking about mental silence itself. We tend to view mental quiet as an all-or-nothing state that requires ideal conditions. A silent room, eyes closed, no distractions. This approach sets us up for failure because it creates a false separation between meditation time and real life. As long as we maintain this division, mental noise will always return when meditation ends. I made this same mistake for years until I discovered a neurological principle that changed everything. Our brains operate according to what scientists call Hebbian learning, essentially neurons that fire together, wire together. This means that whatever mental states we practice repeatedly become our default way of being. If we only practice silence in isolated meditation sessions, our brains never learn to integrate quiet into normal activities. The breakthrough comes when we abandon the idea that mental quiet requires special conditions or long periods of time. Instead, we can rewire our neural pathways by practicing brief moments of complete silence throughout our day, regardless of what we're doing or where we are. This brings us to tip number 4 out of 10, micro-silence integration. This revolutionary approach involves intentionally injecting tiny moments of complete internal silence, just 3 seconds long, between your daily actions. These micro-silences, when practiced consistently, accumulate neurologically to gradually retrain your brain's default mode to prefer quiet over constant chatter. Here's how it works. Throughout your day, identify natural transition points. Before starting your car, after finishing an email, before entering a meeting, after putting down your phone. At each transition, pause for just 3 seconds and experience complete internal silence. Don't try to think about being quiet or repeat a mantra. Simply experience the gap between thoughts, even if it's just for a brief moment. The power of this technique comes from its frequency rather than its duration. While traditional approaches might have you meditate for 20 minutes once a day, micro-silence integration might involve 23-second pauses distributed throughout your day. These brief moments of silence, embedded within your normal activities, teach your brain that quiet is possible anywhere, anytime, not just in special circumstances. Neuroscience research confirms that frequent, brief practices can create more lasting change than occasional longer sessions. Each time you practice a micro-silence, you strengthen neural pathways associated with mental quiet. Over time, these pathways become your brain's preferred routes, making silence increasingly accessible even in busy or stressful situations. Start by identifying 5 specific transition moments in your daily routine, perhaps after waking up, before eating meals, after parking your car, before opening your computer, and before going to sleep. These become your micro-silence triggers. When you hit each trigger, pause for 3 seconds and drop into silence. You'll likely find that these brief pauses are surprisingly difficult at first. Your mind will want to fill them with thoughts, just as nature abhors a vacuum. This is normal. Even experiencing a split second of true silence within your 3-second pause is a victory. With practice, these moments of silence will naturally expand. What makes this approach so powerful is that it integrates mental quiet into your existing life, rather than requiring you to create a separate meditation practice. Every activity becomes an opportunity to practice silence. Washing dishes, walking to your car, waiting for coffee to brew, all become invitations to experience a 3-second micro-silence. As these brief moments accumulate, you'll begin to notice a profound shift. Mental quiet will start to feel like your natural state, with thoughts arising only when needed rather than chattering constantly. The noise doesn't disappear completely, but it becomes the exception rather than the rule. Your mind begins to prefer silence, just as your body prefers to be in balance rather than falling. Begin today with just one micro-silence trigger, perhaps the moment after you put down your phone. Each time you place your phone down, pause for 3 seconds and experience the gap between thoughts. As this becomes habitual, add more triggers until your entire day is interwoven with these brief moments of mental quiet. This simple practice, consistently applied, will rewire your brain to make silence its new default. The language. Reframe protocol. Have you ever noticed how difficult it is to capture certain experiences in words? Perhaps you've witnessed a breathtaking sunset or felt a profound connection with someone, only to find that language falls short when trying to describe it. This limitation isn't just about poetic expression, it reveals a fundamental truth about language that holds the key to quieting your mind permanently. Language shapes our thinking in ways we rarely notice. The very structure of sentences, with subjects acting on objects with past, present, and future tenses, creates patterns in our minds that generate unnecessary mental noise. While we can't function in society without language, we can transform how we use it internally to dramatically reduce mental chatter. Most mindfulness approaches focus on observing thoughts without addressing the linguistic structure that creates them. It's like trying to reduce the noise from a waterfall by standing back from it without considering what's causing the water to flow so forcefully in the first place. When we change the linguistic patterns that shape our internal dialogue, we transform the very source of mental noise. I discovered this principle during a silent retreat when I noticed something fascinating. During extended periods of not speaking, my thoughts began to change form. Without the need to communicate verbally, my internal dialogue shifted from full sentences to simpler, more direct awareness. This experience led me to explore how deliberate language shifts could create lasting mental quiet. This brings us to tip number 5 out of 10. The language reframe protocol. This powerful technique involves restructuring your internal dialogue using present tense, non-judgmental vocabulary that reduces your brain's tendency to elaborate and ruminate. By changing how you talk to yourself, you fundamentally alter the landscape of your thoughts. Here's how it works. Start by becoming aware of your typical thought patterns. Notice how often your internal dialogue uses past or future tenses, creating mental time travel that pulls you away from the present moment. I should have said something different in that meeting, or I'll probably mess up tomorrow's presentation, are examples of language that generates unnecessary mental noise. The first step in the language reframe protocol is shifting all internal dialogue to the present tense. Instead of, I need to figure out what went wrong yesterday, transform it to, I'm noticing thoughts about yesterday right now. Instead of, I hope this situation improves soon, shift to, I'm experiencing this situation right now. This simple tense shift anchors your awareness in the present, where mental quiet naturally resides. Next, eliminate judgmental language from your internal dialogue. Words like should, must, right, wrong, good, and bad create evaluative thoughts that tend to multiply, generating streams of mental commentary. Replace these with observational language that simply notes what is, without evaluation. For example, instead of, I should be more productive, try, I notice I'm working at this pace right now. The third element of the protocol involves removing personal pronouns when possible. Phrases like, I am anxious, or my problem is. Create identification with thoughts and emotions, strengthening their grip on your awareness. Instead, use language that creates space. Anxiety is present, or a challenge is appearing. This linguistic shift helps you experience thoughts and emotions as passing events rather than essential aspects of who you are. Let me give you a concrete example of the complete protocol in action. A typical thought might be, I'm going to fail this project because I always procrastinate, and then everyone will see I'm not good enough. Using the language reframe protocol, this transforms to thinking is happening about the project. Concern is present. Work remains unfinished in this moment. Notice how the reframed language describes the same situation but generates far less elaboration and emotional reactivity. It states what is present without judgment, time travel, or personal identification. This creates immediate mental space and reduces the tendency for thoughts to cascade into noise. Practice this protocol by catching one recurring thought pattern each day and deliberately reframing it according to these principles. Write down the original thought and its reframed version to strengthen your awareness of the shift. With consistent practice, this new language pattern becomes automatic, permanently reducing the mental noise generated by your internal dialogue.
What makes this approach revolutionary is that it works with the neurological pathways that generate thoughts rather than trying to suppress or control the thoughts themselves. By changing the linguistic structure of your internal dialogue, you alter the very architecture of thinking, creating lasting mental quiet from the inside out. Begin today by noticing the tense, judgment, and pronouns in your thoughts. Each time you catch yourself in past or future thinking, using judgmental language or strongly identifying with thoughts, practice the language reframe protocol. This consistent rewiring of your internal dialogue will create a mental environment where quiet isn't something you achieve. It's the natural result of how you use language within yourself. The digital notification recalibration. Right now, within arm's reach of where you're sitting, there's likely a device that's designed to hijack your attention. Your smartphone, with its endless alerts, notifications, and updates, has become one of the greatest sources of mental noise in human history. The average person checks their phone 96 times per day. That's once every 10 minutes of waking life. Each check triggers a cascade of thoughts, pulling your mind away from the present moment and into a noisy stream of information, comparison, and reaction. You've probably heard basic advice about digital detoxes or deleting social media apps. While these approaches can help temporarily, they fail to address the fundamental psychological relationship we've developed with our devices. Simply removing the external trigger doesn't heal the internal craving for stimulation that causes us to reach for our phones in the first place. I discovered this truth the hard way, after multiple failed attempts to reduce my screen time. Temporarily deleting apps or setting time limits would work for a few days, but inevitably, I'd find myself right back in the same patterns. It wasn't until I understood the neurological mechanisms behind digital distraction that I found a lasting solution, one that doesn't require abandoning technology altogether. The breakthrough came when I realized that notifications aren't just external interruptions. They've become integrated into our internal reward system. Each alert creates a tiny dopamine hit in our brains, training us to crave the very interruptions that destroy our mental quiet. To create lasting change, we need to rewire this reward system from the inside out. This brings us to tip number 6 out of 10, the digital notification recalibration. This systematic approach transforms your psychological relationship with notifications, turning your devices from attention hijackers into mindfulness allies. Here's how it works. Instead of focusing on reducing screen time, which addresses the symptom, we need to transform your relationship with notifications, which addresses the cause. The first step is a complete notification audit. Take out your phone right now and go to your notification settings. For each app, ask yourself, does this notification serve my authentic well-being, or does it serve the app's business model? Be ruthlessly honest. Turn off every notification that doesn't directly contribute to your deepest values. Next, we need to recalibrate your neurological response to the notifications you do keep. Currently, your brain likely responds to notifications with automatic, unconscious attention, a Pavlovian response that generates mental noise. We need to transform this into a mindful, conscious choice. Choose one essential notification type that you'll keep, perhaps text messages from close family. For the next week, whenever this notification arrives, practice what I call the notification pause. Before checking the message, take 3 full breaths. Feel the urge to check it arise, peak, and begin to subside as you breathe. Only then consciously choose whether to look at the notification. This simple practice breaks the automatic neurological loop between notification and response. Over time, it reestablishes your conscious choice as the deciding factor in your attention, rather than allowing external triggers to dictate your mental state. The third phase of the recalibration involves creating what I call digital transitions. Most of us move between the digital and physical worlds hundreds of times daily, with no conscious boundary. We glance at our phones while talking with friends, check email while eating, or scroll through social media while walking. These unconscious transitions fragment our attention and generate constant mental noise. Choose 3 specific daily activities that will become completely device-free. Perhaps meals, the first hour after waking, or time with loved ones. Create a clear physical gesture that marks your transition in and out of these digital-free zones. It might be placing your phone in a specific drawer, turning it face down, or simply taking 3 conscious breaths before picking it up again. This gesture becomes a mindfulness trigger, reminding you that you're choosing to shift your attention. What makes this approach revolutionary is that it doesn't fight against technology. It transforms your relationship with it. Your devices themselves become reminders to return to presence rather than sources of distraction. Each notification becomes an opportunity to practice mindful choice rather than an interruption that generates mental noise. Start today with just one element of this protocol, perhaps the notification audit. Turn off all non-essential notifications and observe how this simple change affects your mental quiet. Next week, add the notification pause for the alerts you've kept. Add the notification pause for the alerts you've kept. The week after, implement your digital transitions. This gradual recalibration creates lasting change in your relationship with technology. The goal isn't to eliminate digital devices from your life. They're valuable tools when used consciously. The goal is to transform your relationship with them so they serve your deepest intention for mental quiet rather than constantly pulling you into noise. With consistent practice of this protocol, you'll find that the same devices that once hijacked your attention can actually become allies in cultivating lasting mental peace. Thought metabolization framework. Have you ever noticed that certain thoughts seem to get stuck on repeat in your mind? Perhaps it's a worry about the future, a regret about the past, or an unresolved problem that keeps circling back, refusing to be quieted no matter how hard you try to push it away. This persistent mental recycling is one of the main sources of the noise that fills our minds, making true quiet seem impossible to achieve. Most approaches to mindfulness tell us to observe thoughts without attachment, or to let them go, like clouds passing in the sky. While these metaphors are helpful, they don't address a critical question. Why do some thoughts refuse to pass by? Why do they stick around, circling back again and again despite our best efforts to release them? I discovered the answer during a particularly difficult period when my mind was filled with persistent worries that no amount of meditation seemed to quiet. My breakthrough came when I realized that thoughts aren't just random mental events, they're more like food for the mind. And just like food needs to be properly digested to nourish the body, thoughts need to be properly metabolized to serve the mind. This insight led to one of the most powerful techniques I've ever encountered for creating lasting mental quiet. A method that doesn't fight against persistent thoughts, but transforms how they move through your awareness. This brings us to tip number 7 out of 10, the thought metabolization framework. Instead of trying to control or eliminate thoughts, this revolutionary approach teaches you how to efficiently process mental content so it doesn't recirculate endlessly in your consciousness. Here's how it works. Thoughts that persist do so because they contain something your mind needs to process, perhaps information, insight, or resolution. When you try to suppress these thoughts or merely observe them without engaging, they keep returning because the underlying need for processing remains unmet. The first step in metabolizing thoughts is to recognize which type of thought you're experiencing. Is it informational, containing data you need to remember? Emotional, carrying feelings that need processing? Or constructive, offering solutions or ideas? Each type requires a different metabolization strategy. Begin practicing this framework today by identifying one persistent thought pattern. Ask yourself, is this primarily informational, emotional, or constructive? Then apply the appropriate metabolization strategy. Capture, feel, or engage. Notice how this targeted approach creates mental space where simple observation or suppression failed. With consistent practice, you'll develop an intuitive sense for what each thought needs to be properly metabolized. This skill leads to a mind that processes thoughts efficiently rather than recycling them endlessly, creating lasting mental quiet not by eliminating thinking, but by transforming your relationship with it. Environmental noise mapping. Have you ever noticed how your mind seems quieter in certain places and significantly noisier in others? Perhaps you've experienced mental calm while walking in nature, only to find your thoughts racing again the moment you step into a busy office or scroll through social media. This isn't just coincidence. It's evidence of a profound truth that most mindfulness approaches overlook. Your environment shapes your mind. We tend to think of mental noise as something that originates solely within us, our thoughts, worries, and internal dialogue. But neuroscience reveals a different reality. Your brain is constantly responding to external stimuli, and certain environments trigger predictable patterns of mental activity. Understanding this relationship between external triggers and internal noise is the key to creating lasting mental quiet in today's chaotic world. I discovered this principle during a period when my meditation practice had hit a plateau. Despite consistent effort, I couldn't seem to maintain mental quiet beyond my meditation sessions. The breakthrough came when I began paying attention not just to my internal state, but to how different environments affected my mind. I noticed that specific external triggers can produce mental noise, while other settings naturally facilitated quiet. This insight led to one of the most practical and powerful approaches to creating lasting mental peace, a method that addresses not just your internal response to noise, but the external factors that trigger it in the first place. This brings us to tip number 8 out of 10, environmental noise mapping. This revolutionary technique helps you create a personal noise map of your physical and social environments, identifying specific external triggers that amplify internal chatter and providing targeted interventions for each environmental noise source. Here's how it works. For 1 week, carry a small notebook or use a note-taking app on your phone. Whenever you notice your mind becoming particularly noisy or quiet, record your exact location and situation. What physical environment are you in? Who are you with? What activities are you engaged in? What sensory inputs are present? Sounds, sights, smells, physical sensations. After collecting this data for a week, patterns will emerge. You'll likely discover specific environments that consistently trigger mental noise, perhaps certain locations in your home or office, particular social situations, or specific activities. You'll also identify environments that naturally promote mental quiet, perhaps certain outdoor spaces, rooms in your home, or activities that absorb your attention completely. Once you've identified your personal noise triggers, you can create targeted interventions for each one. These interventions fall into 3 categories: avoid, alter, or adapt. Some noise triggers are best avoided entirely. If checking social media first thing in the morning consistently triggers hours of mental chatter, perhaps that's an environment worth eliminating from your daily routine. If certain people or places reliably generate mental noise without offsetting benefits, giving yourself permission to avoid them when possible is a powerful act of self-care. Other triggers can be altered to reduce their impact. If your open-plan office consistently generates mental noise, perhaps you can create a physical barrier with noise-canceling headphones or by rearranging your workspace. If evening news consumption leads to hours of worried thinking, perhaps you can alter how you consume information, reading selected articles rather than watching emotionally charged broadcasts. For noise triggers that can't be avoided or altered, you can adapt your response. This involves creating a specific mindfulness practice tailored to each challenging environment. For example, if family gatherings inevitably trigger mental noise, you might develop a brief centering practice to use before and during these events. If your commute tends to generate anxious thoughts, transform it into a dedicated mindfulness practice by focusing on physical sensations rather than mental content. What makes this approach revolutionary is that it addresses the causes of mental noise rather than just teaching you to cope with the symptoms. Instead of trying to maintain calm despite a noise-inducing environment, you're systematically transforming your environment to support mental quiet. The most powerful aspect of environmental noise mapping is that it makes visible the invisible influences on your mental state. Many of us blame ourselves for mental noise, assuming it's a personal failing or lack of mindfulness skill. But often, the noise is a natural response to environments that are designed to hijack attention. By mapping these influences, you reclaim agency over your mental space. Begin your noise mapping today. Start with the physical spaces you inhabit most frequently, your home, workplace, and commuting environment. Notice which areas tend to generate mental noise and which naturally promote quiet. Next, map your digital environments, different apps, websites, and communication channels. Finally, map your social environments, different relationships and group dynamics. With your complete noise map in hand, implement one intervention from each category. Avoid one major noise trigger, alter one environment you can't avoid, and to develop an adaptation strategy for one inevitable noise source. These targeted interventions, based on your personal noise patterns, will create immediate and lasting reductions in mental chatter. Remember that environmental noise mapping isn't a one-time exercise. As your life changes, new noise triggers will emerge, while others fade in importance. Revisit your map quarterly, noting new patterns and adjusting your interventions accordingly. This ongoing awareness of how environments shape your mind is itself a powerful mindfulness practice. By becoming conscious of the relationship between external environments and internal noise, you develop the ability to create islands of mental quiet in even the noisiest world. Your inner peace no longer depends solely on your ability to meditate or practice mindfulness. It's supported by environments intentionally designed to nurture the quiet mind you seek. The forgotten rhythm connection. When was the last time you really felt in sync with yourself, with others, with the natural world? That feeling of alignment when everything seems to flow effortlessly isn't just a pleasant experience. It's a glimpse of a fundamental truth about consciousness that modern life has obscured. Rhythm is the foundation of mental quiet. Look closely at any traditional practice for quieting the mind, from Buddhist meditation to indigenous ceremonial drumming, from Sufi whirling to Christian contemplative prayer, and you'll find rhythm at its core. Whether it's the steady cadence of the breath, the repetitive movement of walking meditation, or the measured recitation of mantras, rhythm has always been humanity's doorway to mental stillness. Yet in our modern approach to mindfulness, this crucial element is often overlooked. We focus on thought content, emotional regulation, and attention training, while neglecting the profound impact of biological rhythms on mental state. This oversight has made mental quiet seem more elusive and complicated than it needs to be. I discovered this truth during a period of burnout, when traditional meditation offered little relief from my racing mind. My breakthrough came not from trying harder to quiet my thoughts, but from reconnecting with the natural rhythms of my body and the world around me. This simple shift, from fighting mental noise to aligning with fundamental rhythms, created effortless mental quiet where forced concentration had failed. This brings us to tip number 9 out of 10, the forgotten rhythm connection. This revolutionary approach reveals the neurological link between bodily rhythms and mental quietude, showing how synchronizing breathing, movement, and heart rate can automatically induce states of cognitive stillness without directly fighting mental noise. Here's how it works. Your brain is constantly monitoring rhythms throughout your body. Your heartbeat, breathing pattern, walking pace. Even subtle micro-movements you're not consciously aware of. When these rhythms become chaotic or desynchronized, your brain interprets this as stress, triggering increased mental activity as a protective response. Conversely, when these rhythms become coherent and synchronized, your brain naturally shifts into a state of calm alertness, mental quiet, paired with present moment awareness. The first rhythm to address is breathing. Most people breathe in an irregular pattern, especially when stressed or focused on screens. This irregular breathing sends subtle distress signals to the brain, maintaining a state of low-grade vigilance that manifests as mental noise. The solution isn't complicated breathing exercises. It's rhythm. Try this simple practice. For just 3 minutes, breathe in a perfect 6-count rhythm. Inhale for 3 counts. Exhale for 3 counts, with no pause between. The specific count matters less than the perfect rhythmicity. Notice how quickly your mind begins to quiet as your breath finds this steady rhythm. This happens not because you're controlling your thoughts, but because the rhythmic breathing pattern signals safety to your nervous system, naturally reducing mental activity.
The second crucial rhythm is walking. The bilateral alternating movement of walking has a unique effect on brain function, especially when done at a steady pace. Research shows that rhythmic walking activates both hemispheres of the brain in a balanced way, creating a state neuroscientists call bilateral brain coherence, a precondition for mental quiet. Incorporate a 10-minute rhythmic walk into your daily routine. Focus not on the distance covered or calories burned, but on the perfect steadiness of your pace. Count your steps if it helps maintain rhythm. As with breathing, this isn't about controlling thoughts directly. It's about creating a rhythmic foundation that naturally quiets mental noise. Perhaps the most powerful rhythm for mental quiet is heart rate variability, HRV, the subtle variation in time between heartbeats. When your HRV falls into a coherent pattern, not to be confused with a steady pattern, your brain automatically shifts into a state of calm alertness. This heart rhythm coherence can be achieved through a simple practice. Generate a genuine feeling of appreciation while breathing in a relaxed rhythm. This combination, positive emotion plus rhythmic breathing, creates heart coherence that rapidly induces mental quiet. Practice heart coherence for just 5 minutes daily. Bring to mind something or someone you genuinely appreciate, feeling this appreciation in your heart area while breathing in a gentle rhythm.
This simple practice creates a physiological state that is incompatible with anxious thinking or mental chatter. What makes the rhythm connection approach revolutionary is that it bypasses the thinking mind entirely, rather than using thought to fight thought, a battle you can never fully win. You're changing the underlying physiological state that generates mental noise in the first place. It's like quieting a noisy room not by asking everyone to speak more softly, but by addressing the root acoustical problems. The most powerful application of the rhythm connection comes from combining these practices throughout your day. Rhythmic breathing while walking, heart coherence while breathing rhythmically. These layered rhythms create a neurological symphony that naturally produces the mental quiet you've been seeking. Begin today with just one rhythm practice, perhaps 3 minutes of perfectly rhythmic breathing. Notice how quickly this simple shift affects your mental state. Tomorrow, add a rhythmic walk. The day after, practice heart coherence. As you integrate these rhythm practices into your daily life, you'll discover that mental quiet emerges naturally from physiological coherence. No fighting with thoughts required. By reconnecting with the fundamental importance of rhythm, you're rediscovering what traditional wisdom traditions have always known. The quietest mind emerges not from controlling thoughts, but from aligning with the natural rhythms that underlie all life. Permanent quiet through identity shift. Throughout this journey, we've explored 9 powerful techniques for quieting your mind. Each approach offers real value, and together they create a comprehensive toolkit for finding peace in a noisy world. But there's a profound truth we haven't yet addressed, one that transforms mental quiet from something you do to something you are. If you've ever achieved moments of beautiful mental stillness only to find yourself back in the grip of noise and chatter hours later, you've encountered the core limitation of technique-based approaches. Techniques can temporarily change your state, but they don't automatically transform your fundamental relationship with thought itself. For that, something deeper is required. A shift not in what you do, but in who you understand yourself to be. This insight came to me after years of diligent practice with various mindfulness techniques. I could reliably create states of mental quiet, but they remained dependent on my continued effort. The breakthrough came when I realized I had been operating from a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of mind and identity, a misunderstanding so common in our culture that it's nearly invisible. This brings us to tip number 10 out of 10. Permanent quiet through identity shift. This transformative approach challenges the fundamental assumption that a quiet mind comes from what you do, showing instead how it emerges naturally from recognizing who you really are. Here's the radical truth. You are not your thoughts. This isn't just a helpful metaphor or philosophical idea. It's the direct recognition of your actual nature. Most of us live our entire lives identified with the thinking process, believing, I am the thinker, without ever questioning this assumption. This misidentification is the root cause of all mental suffering and noise. When you believe you are your thoughts, mental quiet becomes an ongoing battle, you versus your mind. But when you recognize that you are the awareness within which all thoughts arise, mental quiet becomes your natural state. From this perspective, thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky of awareness. The sky itself, your true nature, is already perfectly quiet, regardless of how many or how few clouds are present. This identity shift isn't achieved through more techniques or practices, though the approaches we've already explored can help prepare the ground. It happens through direct recognition of what has been true all along, that you are the witnessing awareness, not the thoughts you witness. To facilitate this recognition, try this simple inquiry. In this moment, who or what is aware of your current experience? Notice that thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions come and go, but the awareness of them remains constant. This awareness, this knowing presence, is what you fundamentally are. When you rest as awareness, rather than identifying with thinking, mental quiet isn't something you achieve, it's what you recognize as already present. The noise of thoughts may still arise, but it no longer defines or disturbs you, just as clouds don't wet the sky. This identity shift transforms every aspect of your relationship with mental noise. Rather than seeing thoughts as problems to be solved or controlled, you recognize them as temporary appearances in the field of your awareness, no more yours than the sounds of traffic or birdsong. This fundamental shift in perspective is what all the great wisdom traditions point to as the ultimate solution to mental suffering. To begin exploring this identity shift, practice what I call awareness recognition for just 5 minutes daily. Sit quietly and ask yourself, what is aware of my current experience? Don't try to answer conceptually. Instead, notice directly what is aware of sounds, sensations, thoughts, and emotions. Rest as this awareness itself, rather than as a person who has awareness. As you develop comfort with this recognition, extend it into everyday activities. While driving, who is aware of the road, the car, and any thoughts about your destination? While working, who is aware of the tasks, the environment, and thoughts about deadlines? This ongoing inquiry gradually shifts your center of gravity from identified thinking to witnessing awareness. What makes this approach revolutionary is that it addresses the root cause of mental noise, rather than just managing symptoms. When your sense of self shifts from the temporary contents of consciousness, thoughts, emotions, sensations, to consciousness itself, mental quiet becomes your natural state, rather than an achievement dependent on techniques. This doesn't mean thoughts disappear entirely. They continue to serve their practical function in navigation, planning, and creativity. But they no longer dominate your experience or define your sense of self. You recognize them as tools rather than your identity, using them when needed, and resting in the quiet awareness that is your true nature when they're not required. Begin today with just 5 minutes of awareness recognition. Notice the quiet presence that is aware of all experience, including thoughts. Rest as this awareness itself, rather than as a thinker trying to quiet the mind. With consistent exploration, this recognition deepens naturally, gradually transforming your experience from a person battling mental noise to the quiet awareness within which all experience, including thinking, arises and subsides. This final approach integrates and transcends all the others. The techniques we've explored are valuable supports on the journey, but the ultimate key to permanent mental quiet is recognizing your true nature as the awareness within which all noise appears. From this recognition, the quiet mind you've been seeking reveals itself as what you've always been. As we come to the end of our journey together, I want you to take a moment to recognize how far you have come. We've explored 10 transformative approaches to quieting your mind forever, from the thought waterfall technique to the identity shift that reveals your true nature. Each of these practices offers a unique doorway to the mental peace you've been seeking. Remember that lasting mental quiet isn't about perfection or achieving some ideal state where thoughts never arise. It's about transforming your relationship with thinking itself, learning to stand behind the waterfall, create sensory anchors throughout your day, understand the emotional roots of mental noise, and ultimately recognize yourself as the quiet awareness that is your true nature. The world will continue to be loud. Notifications will buzz, deadlines will loom, and relationships will present challenges. But you no longer need to be at the mercy of this external chaos or the internal noise it triggers. You now have a comprehensive toolkit for finding peace in any circumstance, not as a temporary escape, but as your natural way of being. Begin today by choosing just one of these practices that resonated most deeply with you. Integrate it into your life this week. Next week, add another. And over time, these approaches will weave together into a tapestry of awareness that supports lasting mental quiet in every aspect of your life. The silence you've been searching for has been here all along, waiting just behind the noise of a busy mind. It's not something you need to create or achieve. It's what remains when you stop identifying with the thinking process and recognize your true nature as awareness itself. In this recognition, the quiet mind you've been seeking becomes not just a temporary experience, but your permanent home,